this season, Liverpool are so vulnerable, and sure, offensively they have all the firepower, but defensively against Brentford at the weekend, they sat in silence in the dressing room. It seems like they don't have a response, and this was today. I felt like it was a moment to control the narrative a little bit more, because it is spiraling, like you say, Poppy, and this loss could be anecdotal by the season's end. I think Liverpool have bigger fish to fry than the Carabao Cup. But the aura that you surround yourself with, 6 losses from 7 games, going into not only this weekend against Villa, you have Real Madrid in Champions League coming up next week.
They didn't want to lose 3-0. I think if they would have lost like 2-1 and had a decent performance, it would have been like, okay, no problem. They went with changes. They didn't place emphasis on this competition. But the 3-0 at home with the red card and everything looks really bad. So I think they'll try to.
Do you think with those changes, by the way, that Slot was happy to go out of the competition and thought we don't have the depth, we don't have the momentum to compete on all fronts right now?
I think the timing is probably wrong. I don't think he'll be happy to go out of it. I think that sometimes it's not that you lose football matches, it's how you lose it. And today they lost and they didn't lose it in a great way. And the worrying thing, I would say, from me, looking at it from a manager's or coach's perspective, forget the youngsters, I'll be looking at my senior players, because they're the ones that are more likely playing Premier League games. How did they perform? How did they react? I continue to see the same mistakes they've been doing, and I don't see any positivity from this Liverpool squad. The one player who can only come out of any kind of praise so far is Szoboszlai. From the start of the season to how he's been performing, obviously he didn't perform today, but I look at McAllister in there, I look at Andy Robertson coming in there, you look at Kirkes again, you look at Gomez. These are the players he has to go to for Premier League fixtures to get that right. And for me, it's hard to say that they really put in a performance today where you can even say that the youngsters can look up to that. That is the worrying factor, because they still ain't at that level where they need to be. And how you're going to go from this performance to a Premier League game against Aston Villa, who you're going to be competing against for maybe that top 4 finish, and go all of a sudden one step forward in a positive manner.
He tried a new system and he had no insurance on the bench. So I think this is a little bit of an outlier from their recent results. As far as Crystal Palace is concerned, really well coached. They've got a nice balance to them. They were playing a very familiar system where people can just slip in. I think when you looked at both teams that started, Crystal Palace were slightly strong with less changes. I think the worry for Liverpool is second half, 2-0 behind, when they really needed to go and kind of throw something at Crystal Palace. Their expected goals are 0.06, so that tells its own story. Anfield emptied out pretty quickly. Listen, there's a frustration about Liverpool, but with the team that Arne Slot picked tonight, it feels like he was willing to give way to the AFL Cup to a certain extent. Obviously, would have liked to be in the next round. But the big worry, Jules, is when I get a look at Liverpool's next 3 games coming up. I mean, they're at home to Aston Villa. They've got Real Madrid at Anfield and then away to Manchester City. So the problem's not tonight. I think it's the next 3 games, Jules.
Just before I ask you about how they do go about turning it around, that bench you mentioned there, and you understand Slot making changes. Yeah, you get it, where the priorities lie. But how do you explain, you look at that Liverpool bench, there is not a single senior player on it. How do you explain that? So
the only way I can fathom that, Jules, is that he wasn't too fussed about the competition. And that's the only kind of logical thing I can see from it. They were all there. They were all sat behind the bench. They were cheering, obviously, their teammates on. But, I mean, it's Anfield cut a sad place tonight with a frustrated crowd. And like I said, I seen Arne Slot turn back towards the crowd. I don't know if he was gesturing to someone in particular, but maybe a little bit of frustration from the Liverpool manager. But how do they move on? They've got to look at one another. I wonder if Arne Slot's seen enough tonight, as in players back in a defensive team, and for the opening 20 minutes they were difficult to break down, but they had numbers back.
Yeah, they went to 5 at the back tonight.
Yes, so they went 5 at the back. Yes, I wonder if that was an opportunity for him to see how it looked in the Liverpool system, and if he's going to bring better players into that system.
Change the system, but still conceding too many goals.
I mean, the way they went behind, you've got to be honest, it was a little bit fortunate. It deflects off Gomez, who I thought was a big night for tonight. Gomez, obviously a chance for him to show what he can do to Arne Slot. This is Crystal Palace at their best.
I think that we have to trust the manager. You know, he's done great last season, won the Premier League. I think it's an opportunity for the young kids. And to be honest, right now, I think he would have learned a lot from what he's seen tonight. And for also a lot of these young players, yes, it's incredible. Also, it's a big learning curve for them. They can tell the step up is huge, and they've experienced that tonight. So as a fan, you obviously want to see this club winning games, but also sometimes, you know, you have to look bigger picture. And we've been spoiled. You know, we're used to winning. But actually, I think we've got to look bigger picture, and actually there's going to be a lot of positives for those players in the future that have come out tonight.
Well, you picked a team today. No, look, when you looked at them, I see you asked me the question before, and I said, well, you've made it really difficult for yourself tonight picking that team. You've not helped the young players in there because the team and the players in and around them. He made 10 changes from the weekend against Brentford. Like you can't tell me that he's picked that team today and those subs thinking that'll get me a result against a really good Crystal Palace side. You might hope you can, but I didn't believe for 1 second they could beat him. And he's made a mistake today. But you know what? He's been unbelievable since he come to the club. They're under this is real pressure for everybody concerned. But that's football. That's the price on the ticket. They climbed the mountain last year. They did something absolutely sensational. Now they've got to go back to that character they showed last year to when they won the title and stick together and get some results. Because there's not just, when you ask what's going on with Liverpool, there's so many things. There's so many things. It's not just the defence. It's not just the midfield. It's not just full. It's everything right now. And they've got to show some character. They've got really tough games ahead. But I think today, and I haven't said it very often about Arne because I think he's been sensational, but today was a big mistake. You can't tell me that team was ever going to be capable of beating a really strong Crystal Palace side.
Does it add to the noise? Does it add to the pressure, as Ben asked him? Or, as Arne Slot kind of said, is the pressure at such a level already that it couldn't have gone much further, whatever happened tonight?
No, it gets a lot louder after tonight.
Even
with
the team.
They were well beaten, Mark. Well beaten at home on a run that they're on. I think the team selection actually probably adds more volume and more noise because for me, when you've been in a team that's really struggled, and we spoke about it before the game, that's when you want your leaders. That's when, again, if it's me in that changing room, I want to play tonight. You know, let me go out. And I know people are going to say, you know, fatigue and the games are adding up. And there are certain games that you need to just get out there and try and get a result. And I don't think he's actually done a good enough job of trying to turn down that noise at times and maybe just stop the rot. You know, Chelsea, get back in the game, just take a point. You end up going to lose that. Manchester United, get back in the game, take a point. It almost feels it is all or nothing every game. And then that just spirals and it rumbles on. And then the pressure gets too big to handle, which clearly, you know, not having any of the boys on the bench was my big worry, not just the starting team.
Do you know what, Kay? I think even the staunchest Liverpool fan can't be angry tonight because the group of young players got sent out there. And I really felt for that group of players. I've made my debut for Liverpool in this competition. And the one thing you want when you're a younger player, 2 or 3 younger players playing, you want experienced players around you. That team had no chance of beating Crystal Palace tonight. Even Crystal Palace brought some of their first team players onto the pitch in the second half. It was one-way traffic from minute one. I felt for Nalo, who got sent off. He made his Champions League debut, got sent off. He made his debut in the Carabao Cup tonight, got sent off. But it really was a rookie error from Arne Slot. I have to say, Kay, when you look across the board tonight, and you look at Newcastle, and you look at Spurs, and you look at Arsenal, and you look at Man City, and you look at Crystal Palace, they all played sides with probably 4 or 5 first-team players in it, or at least 3 or 4, 5 first-team players on the bench. Newcastle tonight brought Bruno Guimaraes on, they brought Joe Linton on, they brought Anthony Gordon on, Arsenal brought Bukayo Saka on, they brought Gabriel on, they brought Declan Rice on. Those kids that started the game tonight, it was even younger on the bench. There was no first-team players to be seen on the bench. So what chance?
Like, what's he telling us by doing that? Because you're at Anfield, you need to turn the game around, and your team selection, when it comes to the bench as well, how's he going to do that?
It was awful. It was awful, Kay. Now on social media, a few guys came back at me and said, well, you know, Don, Liverpool have got 3 games in a week. They've got Aston Villa, they've got Real Madrid, they've got Man City. Newcastle have got 3 games in a week. Man City have got 3 games in a week. All the teams that are playing in the Champions Leagues have got 3 games this week. So I've got no idea. I couldn't get a handle on why he put that amount of youngsters in the starting 11, but the bench was just... even younger. It made no sense whatsoever. As I said, when you're a young player, Kay, trying to make your way into Liverpool's first team to try and catch the eye, you want experienced players around you. They had zero chance of winning that. So Liverpool fans will come away from that being so frustrated at Arne Slot because he has to take the blame. You know, it's not the young kid's fault. Arne Slot put that 11 together and put the bench together. So it's totally down to him tonight. So Liverpool fans will come away from it thinking no blame on the youngsters. Tried their best. It was too much for them against a good Crystal Palace side who deserved their win. I think Ali was saying there 3-0, all of it. Could have been a lot more. Could have been 4 or 5. But Arne Slot's got some big questions to answer tonight.
So, well, let's take a look at what's ahead for them, Don. Obviously, beyond Aston Villa at the weekend, it's Real Madrid and Man City. But with this game, Aston Villa at the weekend, what does he need to do here? What's the plan?
Well, ironically, I actually think Liverpool will beat them because Aston Villa won't park the bus. That's been Liverpool's problem. I think Villa will come and try and win the game, which might suit Liverpool. I think it'll be an entertaining game. I think there'll be goals. I think you showed the stats there, the graphics that Liverpool had conceded the first goal in the last 7 games, no clean sheets in 10 games. So they're going to have to find a performance, Liverpool, because they can't. And that's 2 games now they lost at Anfield. Doesn't feel like a disaster when you only lose 2 games so far in the season, but it could get worse. Those 3 fixtures there are tough on paper. They're going to have to start the season somewhere. And the team talk from a manager normally is when you're in a bad run, right, guys, what's gone's gone. Our season starts against Villa. It's the only way you can approach it. You can't look at Real Madrid during midweek thinking, oh, I've got one eye on that one, because if you lose another Premier League game, I think personally the title's done. I don't think Liverpool have got enough clean sheets in them. I think Arsenal are streets ahead of Liverpool defensively. So Liverpool's season starts against Villa. It has to.